Clear out your desk, Amanda. We need people who actually prioritize their work. Those were the words that greeted me the morning I returned to the office. No hello. No sorry for your loss. Just a cold dismissal from my manager, Tom Reynolds, as if burying my sister had been a vacation instead of one of the hardest moments of my life. I froze, the fluorescent lights above buzzing faintly as my mind tried to process what I had just heard. 2 days. That was all I had taken. 2 days of approved leave to stand at my sister's graveside, to hold my mother's trembling hand, to help sort through the chaos that follows a sudden death. I had emailed Tom, submitted the leave request through HR, and even received his typed approval. Take the time you need. We'll manage. Apparently, managing meant deciding my grief proved I didn't care about work enough. I forced myself to breathe. Around me, the office was still waking up. Computers booting, coffee machines hissing, coworkers chatting about weekend plans. For me, it felt like a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. My name is Amanda Hughes. For the last 6 years, I'd been a project coordinator at Fairfield Global Logistics. My work wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. I had built a reputation as reliable, detail-oriented, and the kind of person who stayed until the job was done. My team knew I had their backs. I wasn't just an employee. I was a cornerstone of our department. Or so I thought. Now, Tom stood in front of my desk with his arms crossed, looking down at me like I was some failed experiment. You knew this was a critical week, he said flatly. Instead of being here, you left us shorthanded. It shows where your priorities lie, I stared at him, every word cutting deeper. Critical week? The project we'd been preparing for months had already been wrapped up. My team had worked late nights to meet the deadline before I left. The truth was, there was nothing critical about those 2 days, except the fact that my sister was gone forever. But I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I simply nodded, opened the bottom drawer of my desk, and began packing my things into a cardboard box. My hands moved automatically. Framed photos, the small, succulent plant Jason from IT had given me, the thank you card from a client I'd helped last year. 6 years of loyalty reduced to whatever fit between cardboard walls. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed people starting to watch. Tanya from finance froze mid-step with her coffee. Michelle, my closest colleague, leaned out from her cubicle, her face pale with disbelief. What's going on? She whispered. I've been let go, I said quietly, my voice steadier than I expected. Her jaw dropped. For what? For attending my sister's funeral. Her expression shifted from shock to anger, but before she could speak, Tom raised his voice. Back to work, everyone. Amanda has her reasons, but this is a company, not a support group. The words hung in the air, sour and heavy. No one moved for a moment. Then, reluctantly, keyboards clattered back to life. Phones rang, and people pretended not to look. Except Michelle. She walked over, defiant, and placed her hand gently on my shoulder. This isn't right, she whispered. Don't let them get away with it. I forced a small smile, but inside my stomach churned. Fighting Tom wouldn't change the fact that I was already branded as disposable, and I wasn't about to humiliate myself further in front of people who were too scared to speak up. By 9 o'clock, my box was full. I stood, adjusted my blazer, and walked toward the elevator. As I passed the row of cubicles, I felt dozens of eyes on me. No one said a word, but I caught glimpses. Pity, guilt, fury. A silent solidarity that gave me a flicker of strength. Tom trailed behind me, his tone lowering as if to make himself sound reasonable. You could have handled this differently, Amanda, he muttered. You could have shown more commitment. It didn't have to end like this. I stopped and turned to face him. For the first time, I let the weight of my grief and anger sharpen my words. Commitment, I said, my voice cold. I gave this company 6 years of my life. Late nights, missed holidays. I didn't complain. And when I finally needed 2 days to bury my sister, you call that a lack of commitment? His face twitched, but he said nothing. I stepped into the elevator, meeting his eyes one last time. Remember this moment, Tom. Because I will. The doors slid shut between us. Outside, the September air felt warm against my skin, a sharp contrast to the icy atmosphere I'd just left behind. I placed the box gently in the back seat of my car and sat behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. My phone buzzed. A message from Michelle. This is wrong. Let's talk tonight. Then another from Jason in IT. Everyone's furious. We've got your back. One by one, messages poured in. Quiet words of loyalty from people who weren't free to show it in the office. They saw me. They knew. I stared out the windshield at the company building, its logo gleaming in the morning sun. A place I had once been proud to call my professional home. Now, just another reminder of betrayal. I didn't know what would happen next, but as I started the engine, one thought burned steady in my mind. I wouldn't fight them directly, but I wouldn't forget. And very soon they'd realize what they had thrown away. I thought leaving Fairfield Global Logistics would bring me a strange kind of peace. Instead, the days that followed felt like drifting through fog. Grief from losing my sister still sat heavy on my chest, but now it was layered with betrayal from the company I had devoted myself to for 6 years. On Tuesday morning, I woke up at 6:30 like I always did, muscle memory dragging me out of bed. For a split second, I reached for my work laptop before remembering it was already in a cardboard box in the back of my car. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the half-empty coffee cup I hadn't touched, wondering what my next step would be. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from Michelle. You won't believe what's happening here. A moment later, another came through. Tom is panicking. Henderson account files can't be found. I frowned. The Henderson account was one of our largest clients, and I'd personally handled their renewal preparation for weeks. Every report, every proposal, every client note, I had created an organized system on the server that only made sense if you knew my method. Not intentionally hidden, but let's just say it wasn't something Tom would be able to navigate overnight. I typed back quickly. Everything is on the server. My folders are labeled. If they can't find it, they're not looking in the right place. No reply. I tried to push it out of my mind, but by lunchtime, my phone buzzed again. Jason from IT this time. Tom just called an emergency team meeting. Everyone's furious. The CEO is asking questions. A rush of conflicting emotions washed over me. Satisfaction, anger, guilt. It hadn't even been 48 hours since I walked out, and already the cracks were beginning to show. That evening, I met Michelle at a small diner near my apartment. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but her expression was fiery. You should have seen it today, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Tom was pacing like a caged animal. He kept blaming everyone else, saying nobody had prepared the Henderson files properly. I stirred my tea slowly. And nobody pointed out that I had already finished them before I left? Oh, people pointed it out, Michelle said bitterly. But without you there, nobody knows how to present it the way the client expects. The system's a mess without you. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't looking for validation, but hearing that my absence left such a hole made me realize just how much value I had provided. Value Tom had dismissed as nothing. Michelle leaned forward, lowering her voice. The CEO was furious. He asked Tom why the project lead was suddenly unavailable, and Tom just muttered something about commitment issues. Everyone could see Hank didn't buy it. Hank? I repeated. Yeah, Hank Porter, the CEO. He looked like he wanted to strangle Tom right there in the conference room. She smirked faintly, then sighed. Amanda, people are talking. Everyone's asking questions about why you were really fired. I shook my head. I don't want to drag anyone into this. It's done. Michelle studied me carefully. Is it, though? Because it doesn't look like Fairfield is doing so well without you. Her words lingered with me long after she left. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. my sister's face drifting into my thoughts. She had always told me, "Don't let people walk all over you, Amanda. Know your worth." On Wednesday morning, my phone rang just as I was pouring coffee. I didn't recognize the number at first. When I answered, the voice on the other end made me pause. "Amanda Hughes?" "Yes." "This is Paula Martinez, Regional Director at Fairfield Global Logistics." "I'd like to talk for a second." I thought I had misheard. Paula was Tom's boss, the kind of executive who rarely got involved unless something serious was happening. "I'm not sure what there is to talk about," I said cautiously. Her tone softened, but there was an urgency beneath it. "I understand you were terminated earlier this week. I want to hear your side of what happened." I hesitated. "Was this a trap?" "With all due respect, Paula, I don't work for Fairfield anymore. My side doesn't matter." "It matters," she said firmly. "The CEO has questions, and frankly, so do I." I ended the call without agreeing to meet. But my hands shook as I set down the phone. Why was the regional director suddenly interested? Why now? Just days after Tom had coldly told me I didn't prioritize work. By Thursday, the whispers had turned into noise. Michelle texted, "Clients are asking for you directly. Wilson account threatened to pull their renewal if you're not involved." Jason added, "Tom's losing it." Hank demanded answers in front of the entire senior staff. Then came the message that stopped me in my tracks. Word is, the CEO wants to call you directly. I stared at my phone, heart pounding. Just a week ago, I was disposable, a nobody. Now, the CEO of the entire company was demanding to hear from me. I didn't know what I would say when that call came. But one thing was certain. Fairfield Global Logistics had made a grave mistake, and the fallout was only just beginning. Friday morning started like any other that week. Quiet, almost unnervingly so. I had no office to rush to, no deadlines to check, no back-to-back meetings filling my calendar. The silence should have been peaceful, but instead it gnawed at me. After 6 years of structure, the sudden emptiness felt foreign. I was midway through making breakfast when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut told me to answer. "Hello? Is this Amanda Hughes?" The voice was deep, steady. "Yes, speaking." "This is Hank Porter, CEO of Fairfield Global Logistics." I froze. I had never spoken to him directly. He was the kind of executive you only saw in quarterly town halls or company newsletters, not someone who casually called middle managers. "I'd like a word about your departure," he continued. "Do you have a moment?" I swallowed, my heart pounding. "I suppose I do." There was no small talk. Hank went straight to the point. "I've received concerning reports about how your termination was handled. Clients are calling, demanding to know why their account lead has disappeared. Internally, several of your colleagues have raised serious concerns. I need to understand what happened." I gripped the edge of the counter. His tone wasn't angry. It was clipped, controlled. But beneath it, I heard urgency. "I was fired," I said evenly, "for taking 2 days of approved leave to attend my sister's funeral." There was a pause. A silence so heavy I thought the line had gone dead. Then Hank spoke, his voice lower. "That's the official reason Tom gave?" "Yes." Another pause. Then, "That's unacceptable." For the first time that week, I felt a spark of validation, but I wasn't going to let emotion cloud my judgment. "With respect, Mr. Porter," I said carefully, "it wasn't just unacceptable. It was dehumanizing. I gave 6 years to that company. I met deadlines, trained new staff, stayed late whenever needed. And when I finally needed 2 days, I was treated like I'd abandoned my post." He exhaled sharply, as though trying to contain his frustration. "I wasn't informed of this." If I had been... He trailed off. "Amanda, would you be willing to meet with me and Paula Martinez on Monday? I want to resolve this matter directly." The thought of walking back into that building made my stomach turn. I pictured Tom's smug face, the coldness of HR's office, the silence of my colleagues too scared to speak up. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut on all of it, but another part whispered, "This is leverage." "I'll think about it," I said finally. "I hope you do," Hank replied. His voice softened slightly. "And Amanda? I'm very sorry for your loss. You deserved compassion, not punishment." When the call ended, I sat down slowly, staring at the phone in my hand. The CEO himself had apologized to me, something I'd never imagined. Yet beneath the apology, I sensed desperation. Fairfield was bleeding, and my absence had ripped the wound wider. That afternoon, Michelle called. Her voice was tense. "You should have seen it today. Henderson account just announced they're reconsidering their contract." Tom looked like he was about to faint. I felt a bitter pang of satisfaction. Maybe now he understands what commitment really means. "It's more than that," Michelle said. "Paula's been digging into his record. There are whispers about previous complaints. People are starting to talk about whether he even belongs in that role." The pieces were shifting faster than I expected. Just a week ago, I had been disposable. Now, the man who humiliated me was suddenly the one under scrutiny. That night, lying awake, I thought about my sister again. She had been the fiery one, the one who always pushed me to stand up for myself. "You're stronger than you think, Amanda. Don't let people silence you." Maybe this was my chance. Not just to defend myself, but to show that treating people as disposable had consequences. On Saturday morning, I went for a long walk along the river. The air was crisp, the water rushing steadily past the rocks. I thought about the team I'd left behind: Michelle, Jason, the others, people who had sent message after message of support. They didn't just lose a colleague when I left. They lost their advocate, their buffer against Tom's arrogance. My phone buzzed again. A text from Jason. "Word is, the board knows now. Big changes coming." Another from Michelle. "If you go back in Monday, don't go alone. Everyone wants to back you up." I stopped walking, the river roaring in my ears. For the first time since that cold Friday morning when Tom had told me to clear my desk, I felt something shift inside me. Not grief, not anger. Something steadier. Resolve. By the end of the weekend, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't walking back into Fairfield as a discarded employee. I was walking back as someone who finally knew her worth, and they were about to learn it too. Monday morning, I walked into Fairfield Global Logistics with my head high, though my stomach was tight with nerves. The glass doors slid open as if nothing had changed, but everything had. I wasn't the same Amanda who had been humiliated a week ago. I carried no cardboard box this time, only a leather folder with a few notes and a copy of Tom's email approving my bereavement leave. Proof. Not that I needed it, but having it in my hand felt like armor. At the reception desk, the woman gave me a polite but wary smile. "Good morning, Amanda. They're expecting you upstairs." The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, Paula Martinez was waiting. Dressed in a navy suit, she looked more composed than I felt, but there was an urgency in her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "Hank's already in the conference room." We walked together, and I noticed the whispers as we passed rows of desks. People paused mid-typing, their eyes following me. Some offered subtle nods of encouragement. Others looked simply curious. Word had spread. Inside the conference room, Hank Porter stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear. He ended the call as soon as he saw us. "Amanda, thank you for agreeing to meet." I nodded, forcing my voice to remain calm. "You asked for my side of the story. I'm here to give it." Paula motioned for me to sit. Across the table was an empty chair. I didn't need to ask who it was for. A few moments later, Tom Reynolds walked in. His face was pale, his jaw tight. He avoided my eyes as he sat down, fumbling with his tie. "Let's begin," Hank said, his tone clipped. "Amanda, you were terminated last week. I've heard multiple accounts of what happened. Please explain. In your own words, I pulled the printed email from my folder and slid it across the table. I requested 2 days of bereavement leave to attend my sister's funeral. Tom approved it. When I returned, he told me to clear my desk because I didn't prioritize work. That's the entire story. Paula's expression hardened as she read the email. Hank scanned it too, his face darkening. Tom? Hank asked finally. Tom cleared his throat. It was a critical operational week. We needed all hands on deck. Amanda's absence, while unfortunate, sent the wrong message to the team about priorities. Priorities? I said sharply, unable to hold back. My sister was dead, Tom. I wasn't on a beach. I wasn't at a spa. I was burying my family's silence. Even Paula shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Hank leaned forward, his voice cold. Tom, did you escalate this before terminating Amanda? Did you consult HR, or me, or even Paula? Tom stammered. No, but as department manager, I had discretion. You had poor judgment. Hank cut in. And now we're at risk of losing 2 of our largest accounts because of it. Paula spoke up, her voice sharp. Henderson has already delayed their renewal pending Amanda's involvement. Wilson has threatened to walk. Do you have any idea what this is costing us? Tom's face reddened. With respect, these clients are overreacting. Amanda wasn't irreplaceable. Irreplaceable enough that your team can't function without her. Paula snapped. I stayed quiet, letting their words hang in the air. For once, I didn't need to defend myself. The truth was doing the work for me. Hank turned back to me. Amanda, what outcome are you seeking? The question caught me off guard. I hadn't planned to demand anything. Part of me wanted to say I didn't want anything from Fairfield. But another part knew this was my chance to set the record straight. Not just for me, but for everyone who had watched in silence as Tom humiliated me. I don't want my job back, I said finally. The trust is broken. What I want is acknowledgement, written acknowledgement that I was wrongfully terminated. My reputation in this industry matters, and Tom's decision shouldn't stain it. Hank nodded slowly. That's reasonable. Paula added, we can draft a formal letter today. Tom shifted uncomfortably. You can't just... Yes, we can, Hank said firmly. And as of now, Tom, you're suspended pending an internal review. The color drained from Tom's face. For the first time, he looked small, deflated. I stood, gathering my folder. Then we're done here. Hank stood too. Amanda, thank you for your time. And again, my condolences. You deserved better than this, I met his gaze. Thank you. I know my worth now. As I left the building, whispers followed me again. But this time, they weren't whispers of pity. They were whispers of recognition, of respect. Outside, the autumn air felt crisp, almost invigorating. My phone buzzed. Michelle. Word is Tom's been suspended. About time. Then another from Jason. Clients are asking if you'll be back. Everyone's rooting for you. I typed back a simple reply. I'm not coming back. But this isn't over, because in that moment I realized the true revenge wasn't just walking away with my head high. It was watching Fairfield unravel because of the arrogance of one man, and knowing I no longer had to carry the weight of it. And something told me the unraveling had only just begun. 2 weeks after that tense Monday meeting, the letter from Fairfield arrived in my mailbox. Plain envelope. Company letterhead. I stood in my kitchen and read it 3 times to make sure I hadn't imagined it. We acknowledge that the termination of Amanda Hughes was conducted in error and without sufficient cause. We regret the circumstances and confirm that she remains in good standing within the industry. Signed by Hank Porter, CEO. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was enough. Enough to prove that Tom's decision hadn't been about my competence or my worth. Enough to protect my reputation in an industry where one rumor could end a career. I folded the letter neatly, placed it in a file, and felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Meanwhile, Fairfield was in freefall. Michelle and Jason kept me updated through late-night texts and quick coffee catch-ups. Henderson pulled their renewal entirely. Wilson froze negotiations until they could be sure Tom was no longer involved. Smaller accounts started trickling away too. Clients didn't just want results, they wanted trust. And trust had evaporated. Tom's office is cleared out, Michelle told me one night. He's gone. Nobody's saying it officially, but it's over for him. I thought about the man who had told me coldly to clear my desk, as if 6 years of loyalty were nothing. I should have felt satisfaction, maybe even triumph. Instead, I just felt done, like a chapter I didn't need to revisit. Fairfield scrambled to contain the damage. Paula, to her credit, reached out again, this time not with demands, but with honesty. We're restructuring, she admitted over the phone, trying to rebuild trust. But I don't blame you for walking away. I thanked her politely. But the truth was, Fairfield had already burned its bridges with me, because something else had happened in those 2 weeks. The day after my confrontation, I received a call from a competitor, Atlas Freight Solutions. Their regional VP had heard rumblings about my situation and wanted to talk. Word travels fast in logistics. Within days, I was sitting in a bright office across town, being offered a role as operations manager. Better pay, better hours. A culture that, from everything I'd seen, valued its people instead of grinding them down. I accepted. On my first day, I walked into Atlas's open plan office to find a desk already waiting for me. Flowers on top, a handwritten card from the team. Welcome, Amanda. We're glad you're here. It was such a small thing, but it hit me harder than I expected. After weeks of feeling disposable, here I was, valued before I'd even proven myself. Michelle and Jason applied a few weeks later, then Veronica from Client Services. One by one, familiar faces began to appear at Atlas, each of them saying the same thing. Fairfield doesn't deserve us. We'd rather work where people matter. By December, I was managing a team that felt alive again. We worked hard, yes, but we laughed too. We celebrated birthdays. We checked in on each other when someone was going through a tough time. It reminded me of what work was supposed to be. People, not just numbers. One afternoon, Michelle walked into my office with a grin. Guess who just signed with us? She said, waving a contract. I scanned the papers. Henderson. The very account Tom had nearly destroyed. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not out of spite, but out of sheer relief. It felt like the final piece falling into place. That night, I drove out to the cemetery where my sister was buried. The air was cold, the grass frosted at the edges, but I needed to be there. I stood by her headstone, hands tucked into my coat pockets, and spoke softly. They fired me for going to your funeral, I said. But it led me here. To something better. To people who actually value me. You always told me not to let anyone walk over me. I think you'd be proud. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment I felt a strange calm. As I drove home, I realized something important. My revenge hadn't been in watching Fairfield collapse or Tom lose his job. It hadn't been in the letter Hank Porter signed or the gossip that spread through the industry. My real revenge was simple. I had built something better. I had walked away with dignity, found a place that respected me, and taken people I cared about with me. Fairfield had lost not because I fought them, but because they showed their true values. And in the end, those values destroyed them. The best revenge wasn't shouting, suing, or burning bridges. It was thriving. And I was. It was supposed to be simple. A week in Florida with my parents and my sister's family. Sunshine, rides, laughter. A first big trip for my 7-year-old daughter, Ellie. She'd been buzzing for days, counting down on a calendar she made herself, every square filled with glitter and crooked stickers. I'd packed her favorite clothes, the pink headphones she never took off, and that worn-out stuffed bear that looked more gray than white by now. When we reached the airport that morning, everything smelled like coffee and jet fuel. My parents were already at the counter, surrounded by suitcases that could have carried a small planet. My sister Melissa was scrolling on her phone, her husband beside her with matching sunglasses. Typical. Ellie ran ahead, waving her boarding pass like a golden ticket. "Grandma, we're really going," she said, breathless with excitement. My mother smiled thinly, barely touching her hair. "Yes, dear." "Go stand with your cousins," I told myself to breathe. My work had exploded that week. Deadlines, meetings, so I couldn't go. I'd planned everything, though. Hotel booked, flights arranged, expenses prepaid. It wasn't cheap, but family time mattered. At least that's what I thought. "Are you sure you'll be okay alone?" my mom asked, like I was the child in this story. "I'll survive 5 days, Mom." I smiled. "You'll have fun." She looked unconvinced, as always. They started boarding soon after. Ellie hugged me so tight her small fingers trembled. "You'll come next time?" "Promise," I said, kissing the top of her head. "Be brave, okay?" She nodded, smiled, then followed the group toward the gate. Pink backpack bouncing with each step. I stood there watching them go, waving until the crowd swallowed her. It should have felt like pride. Instead, there was a tiny flicker of unease I couldn't name. At 8:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. A photo from Mom. Ellie smiling under the glowing departure sign, one missing tooth. Both thumbs up. "Boarding now." I smiled and showed it to a coworker later that morning, half bragging, half soothing the ache in my chest. I told her, "She's off on her first adventure." She said, "You raised a brave one." And for a while, I believed that everything was fine. Until 10:47 a.m. That's when my phone buzzed again. One message. No photo this time. No emojis, just words that didn't make sense. "We voted." "She's not part of this trip," I stared at the screen. Confused. "We voted?" I thought it was a bad joke. The kind my family used to make when they wanted attention. So I laughed under my breath, turned the phone face down, and went back to my meeting. If I'd known what that message really meant, I would have burned the world to reach her faster. It wasn't until after lunch that the silence began to feel heavy. No updates, no texts from my mom or Melissa. Normally, they'd be sending pictures of cocktails or kids screaming on roller coasters. I refreshed my messages. Nothing. By 4 o'clock, I tried calling. No answer. 5 o'clock. Straight to voicemail. By 6, the ache in my chest turned into something sharp. Finally, I called the airline. The woman on the other end sounded apologetic, typing quickly. "Yes, the passengers boarded successfully," she said. Then a pause. Except, there was a note on one of the manifests. A minor passenger did not board. My mouth went dry. "What? Who?" "Your daughter." It says here she was escorted to the care desk. The next few minutes blurred. I drove through traffic I barely remember, hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles burned. I don't even remember parking, just running into the terminal, eyes darting through crowds until I saw her. Ellie was sitting on a bench beside an airline staff member, legs swinging, clutching her stuffed bear. Her cheeks were red, eyes swollen. When she saw me, she whispered one thing. "Grandma said I wasn't coming." Something inside me cracked open. The staff member explained that my parents had checked in, but at boarding time, they said Ellie would not be traveling. They said her mother had changed her mind. The woman said softly. "We followed protocol. She's been safe with us all day." Safe. My daughter had spent 6 hours in an airport with strangers while her family drank champagne in first class. I signed the papers, thanked the staff, and took Ellie home. She fell asleep in the car halfway through, clutching my hand like a lifeline. When we got home, she murmured, "Mommy, was I bad?" I told her no, that she was perfect, that Grandma and Aunt Melissa were wrong. After I tucked her in, I sat in the dark, phone glowing in my palm. The message still there. We voted. She's not part of this trip. I didn't call. I didn't scream. I didn't send a single word back. Instead, I opened my laptop. Because this wasn't the first time my family had decided who belonged and who didn't. But it would be the last time they got to vote on my child's worth. And 7 days from that night, they'd learn what it feels like to be left behind. That night, after Ellie fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the glow of my laptop. The house was too quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock. Every sound felt louder, sharper, like the world was holding its breath. I scrolled through my phone again, through old texts and photos, years of family messages that suddenly looked different. Every smile, every love you now carried a shadow. I opened our family group chat. Messages from my mom and sister filled the screen. Pictures of palm trees, kids in sunglasses, drinks with tiny umbrellas. No mention of Ellie, no apology. Just vacation updates like nothing had happened. Then I noticed the last line of the photo caption from my mom. Finally, some peace and quiet. Peace and quiet. My 7-year-old's tears had bought them peace. I thought about calling, but what was there to say? They'd voted, apparently. A democratic betrayal. That was the thing about my family. Everything was always decided by majority growing up. It was how they justified everything unfair. Who gets the bigger bedroom? Who gets the new bike? Who's right, even when they're wrong? They called it fairness. I called it domination disguised as democracy. I typed and deleted a dozen messages that night. Everything I wrote felt too small, too polite. What I wanted to say couldn't fit inside a text bubble. Around midnight, I shut the laptop and sat in the dark, tracing the outline of Ellie's stuffed bear with my fingers. The fur was matted from her crying earlier. My parents had always treated my sister, Melissa, like she was made of glass. Fragile, precious, and somehow deserving of the best. I was the capable one, the one who didn't need help. It started when we were kids. She'd cry over losing a board game, and I'd have to let her win to keep the peace. If we both got sick, Mom would bring her soup and tell me to rest quietly so she wouldn't worry. By the time we hit high school, the pattern was set in stone. Melissa could crash a car, skip classes, and still get sympathy. I could bring home awards, scholarships, perfect grades, and be told not to show off. My father once said, "You're strong, Eva." She's not. You'll understand one day, maybe I do now. Maybe strength in their language meant expendable. When I left home for college, I thought I'd escaped it. But families like mine have a way of pulling you back. There were always emergencies, rent money, car trouble, medical bills that somehow only ever belonged to Melissa. Mom would call, her voice trembling. You know she's struggling. You can afford to help, and I always did. Because helping was what made me valuable to them. Jason, my ex-husband, used to warn me. They don't see you, Ava. They see what you can do for them. He was right, but I didn't want to admit it. Even after the divorce, I kept trying to hold the family together, for Ellie's sake. I wanted her to know love didn't always mean debt. But after the airport, I couldn't lie anymore. The next morning, I woke to a text from Mom. Glad you picked her up. She'll be fine. We thought she'd make a scene on the plane. Didn't want to risk it. Enjoy your quiet week. I read it twice, then a third time. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness, from disbelief. Didn't want to risk it. Like my child was luggage too fragile to take. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the folder where I kept all the receipts. The Florida tickets I'd paid for, the hotel booking in my name, the rental car deposit. Every expense had my signature. Every charge proved they'd used me, again. By noon, I had printed them all. Seeing the numbers lined up in black and white made everything real. It wasn't just emotional betrayal. It was financial, deliberate, rehearsed. They'd made me pay for a vacation that excluded my daughter. At 2 p.m., a new photo appeared on the family chat. Everyone smiling at a theme park entrance. Melissa had captioned it, "Family time." Missing a few, but we're all good here. Missing a few. She meant Ellie. She meant me. And they were good. That night, Ellie asked if Grandma had called. I told her no. She just nodded and hugged her bear tighter. Maybe next time she'll let me go, she said softly. My throat closed up. Maybe next time we'll go without them, I said. When she was asleep, I opened my laptop again. This time I didn't scroll aimlessly. I started writing. Not to them, not yet, but for me. I listed every favor, every loan, every family expense that had my name on it. It looked less like generosity and more like a ledger of manipulation. I don't know how long I sat there, but when I looked up, dawn was breaking through the curtains. I made coffee, strong and bitter, and looked around the quiet house. For once, it wasn't silence that filled it. It was focus. They'd voted yes, but they'd also left evidence. Financial, emotional, digital. And I was done pretending fairness ever existed in our family. Because the thing about people who always take is that they never imagine the giver will stop. They would learn soon enough. 7 days from now, they'd understand what it means to be excluded. Truly, completely, from someone's life. And unlike them, I wouldn't need a vote. 3 days passed before I spoke a single word to my family. I worked, cooked, and tucked Ellie in as if life were normal, but inside something was shifting. Every message from my mom went unanswered. Every photo from Melissa, poolside drinks, matching t-shirts, fake smiles, stayed unopened. The longer their silence stretched, the clearer it became. They didn't think they'd done anything wrong. By the 4th morning, I stopped checking my phone altogether. Instead, I opened my laptop and began to trace every thread that tied me to them, financially, legally, and emotionally. I wasn't just angry. I was methodical. Because anger fades, but proof doesn't. I started with the Florida trip. The flights, hotel, and car rental had all been charged to my card. My mother had insisted it was easier that way, promising to reimburse me later. They never did. I had the booking confirmation, receipts, even the email where she'd written, "You're such a blessing, Eva. We'll handle you next month." That was 2 months ago. Next, I looked at the house. A year earlier, I'd let Melissa move into one of my rental properties. She'd cried about losing her apartment, said it would be temporary. Temporary had become 12 months of partial rent and endless excuses. "We'll catch up when Ryan gets steady work," she said. "You know we're good for it." They weren't. I'd covered the property tax, maintenance, and utilities myself. When I added everything up, my jaw tightened. Over $30,000 unpaid. Then, the smaller things. Emergency loans, forgotten bills, deposits I'd covered for their children's camps. I'd even paid for my parents' anniversary cruise because it wouldn't be the same without family. Apparently, family meant everyone except my daughter. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the growing spreadsheet. Total, $54,260, and that was before counting the price of Ellie's tears. Jason called that evening. He and I had stayed civil after the divorce, distant but cordial. He'd heard about the airport incident from a mutual friend. "Are you okay?" he asked. His voice was cautious, like he was afraid of stepping on glass. "I'm fine," I lied. "Eva, I know that tone. You're planning something not planning," I said. "Documenting." He was quiet for a beat. They crossed a line this time. "They erased one," I said. After we hung up, I sat staring at my reflection in the laptop screen. I looked calm, too calm. It reminded me of my mother. The same stillness she used before saying something cruel. I realized I finally understood it. Calm wasn't peace. It was focus sharpened into a blade. The next morning, I made calls. A lawyer friend, Daniel, owed me a favor. We'd met years ago when I helped his firm with a real estate project. When I told him the situation, he didn't interrupt. He just listened. Finally, he said, "You're not asking for revenge. You're asking for accountability." "Exactly," I said. "I can draft a formal letter, a repayment notice. Keep it factual, professional. If they ignore it, we'll escalate legally." "Do it," I said. Are you sure? This could destroy whatever's left of the relationship. I thought of Ellie crying at the airport, asking if she'd done something wrong. There's nothing left to destroy. That night, I drafted my own version of the letter before Daniel's official one arrived. I called it Family Reimbursement Statement. The name almost made me laugh. Polite, sterile, the opposite of what it really was. A mirror held up to years of quiet exploitation. I itemized everything. Rent owed, trip expenses, childcare costs, and even the Florida incident's emergency recovery fee. My lawyer's idea. Each line had receipts attached. Each figure had a date. At the bottom, I wrote one sentence that felt like a heartbeat. Payment due in 10 business days. Failure to comply will result in legal action. No threats, no emotion, just numbers, the language they respected most. Ellie came into the kitchen as I was printing it. "Mommy, are you working again?" she asked. "Just finishing something important," I said. She climbed onto a chair beside me, watching the paper slide out of the printer. "Is that for Grandma?" "Yes," I said. "It's time she pays for what she took." Ellie tilted her head. "You mean my trip?" I smiled softly. "That's part of it." After she went to bed, I sat staring at the letter. It wasn't just about money. It was about value. Mine and Ellie's. Every time I'd said yes, they'd learned I was safe to take from. Every favor taught them I'd never fight back. That lesson ended now. Before midnight, I sent copies of the letter to my parents and Melissa, attaching every receipt. The subject line read, "Outstanding balances." I didn't write a message. I didn't explain. They'd understand. Then I turned off my phone and went to bed, for the first time in years without the familiar weight of guilt pressing on my chest. By morning, I had 20 missed calls and 5 new voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them, because the moment I hit send, the balance finally shifted. And I knew, in a way they never would, that justice didn't always come from anger. Sometimes it came from silence wrapped in proof. 7 days wasn't over yet. Their lesson had only just begun. By noon, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Calls, texts, group chat notifications, my mother, my father, Melissa, even my brother-in-law, all demanding explanations. I ignored every one of them. I spent the morning drinking cold coffee and watching sunlight crawl across the kitchen tiles, the house quiet except for the distant hum of the refrigerator. Around 1 p.m., a video call came through. Family group. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Their faces appeared on screen. Mom in her beach hat, Dad beside her looking annoyed, Melissa lounging on a deck chair with sunglasses pushed up into her hair. The Florida sun behind them made their smiles look brittle. Mom started first, her voice sugar-coated but sharp. "Eva, honey, we just got your email." "What on earth is this supposed to be?" Melissa laughed. "A bill? Really? 50-something $1,000? You've lost it." Dad folded his arms. "You're overreacting." "This is family business, not a transaction." I waited until they ran out of words. "You left my daughter at an airport," I said quietly. "This is a transaction." "You've been taking for years. Now you pay." Melissa rolled her eyes. "Oh, please." "We took her off the trip because she was being difficult. We did you a favor?" "A favor?" My voice didn't rise. I didn't need it to. A 7-year-old crying alone by a terminal door is a favor? Mom sighed dramatically. "You always twist things, Eva." "We made a judgment call. You should thank us for handling it." I let out a small laugh, the kind that doesn't sound like laughter at all. "You think abandoning a child is handling it?" Their smiles began to falter. The silence on the call thickened. Even the background sound of waves seemed to pause. Dad finally spoke. "Eva, you're making a scene over nothing. We've always helped you. You owe us more than you realize." "I owe you?" I repeated slowly. "Let's check the math." I lifted the letter into view, pages of receipts clipped neatly. Flights, hotel, rent, repairs. I've been paying for your vacations and Melissa's home for years. You didn't help me. You drained me. Melissa's voice cracked into a higher pitch. You think you can charge your own family? Who does that? The kind of person you left behind, I said. 10 business days. After that, the lawyer takes over. Mom's mask finally slipped. You'll regret this, she hissed. Maybe, I said. But at least my regrets sleep safely at home. Then I ended the call. The silence that followed felt heavier than any shouting could have been. I stared at my reflection in the black screen. Calm, almost detached. For the first time, their guilt wasn't mine to carry. By evening, the guilt parade began. Text after text poured in. We're worried about you. This isn't like you. You're tearing the family apart. You're being cruel. I read each one and deleted it. Every line sounded like a recycled script, the same manipulation dressed in concern. When they realized guilt wasn't working, they switched tactics. Melissa posted a picture on Facebook. Her drink raised, captioned, "Money changes people." Mom commented, "Proud of you for staying graceful through pain." By morning, my inbox filled with messages from cousins asking if I'd really sued my own family. I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded the post to Daniel, my lawyer friend. Within hours, he sent a short, dry email to my parents. Cease defamation. Public posts are admissible evidence. The posts vanished the same afternoon. In their place appeared, misunderstanding cleared up. All love here, accompanied by terrified emojis. That night, they showed up at my door. 3 sharp knocks, the sound of entitlement. When I opened it, Mom smiled the way she used to with waiters, practiced kindness. Sweetheart, let's talk. This is just a misunderstanding. No, it isn't, I said. Dad stepped forward. Let's go inside. We can settle this privately. I'm fine out here. Melissa crossed her arms. You're blowing this out of proportion. It's about Maddie, isn't it? She was misbehaving, Eva. You're letting emotion control you. You left her alone, I said evenly. You don't get to call that parenting. Mom's voice dropped lower, trembling with manufactured pity. You've changed. You're cold. I learned from you, I said. The words hung between us like smoke. Tracy tried again, her tone slipping from charm to threat. You'll be sorry when this ends up public. I met her gaze. Then maybe people will finally know who you really are. Dad exhaled loudly, shaking his head. You used to have respect for your family. I still do, I said. For the one I'm building, not the one that keeps breaking me. Mom's lip trembled. You're turning your back on your own parents. You left my daughter, I said quietly. I think we're even. The air went still. Even the birds outside seemed to stop. I stepped back and closed the door slowly. The latch clicked, a small, final sound that felt louder than their shouting could ever be. I leaned against the door for a moment, heart pounding, but not from fear. Relief. It was over. Or so I thought. The next day, a letter arrived from their lawyer, a single page claiming unreasonable financial demands. Daniel handled it without blinking. He sent back every contract, every signed lease, every record of payment. Let's see them try to argue with math, he said. That night, I sat beside Ellie while she drew on the living room floor. A rabbit, she said, holding up the page. He's running away. From what? I asked. She thought for a second. From people who don't love him right. I smiled, brushed her hair back. Smart rabbit. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like running. Because this time, it wasn't about escaping them. It was about making sure they couldn't follow. 3 weeks later, I got an email from Daniel with the subject line, "Settlement accepted." I opened it slowly, unsure whether I wanted to smile or scream. The message was short and clinical. My parents and Melissa had agreed to pay the full amount. A lump sum first, followed by monthly installments, all notarized, signed, and enforceable. I read it twice before leaning back in my chair. The quiet in the house felt different now. Not heavy, not hollow, just steady. Ellie was in the living room, humming to herself while drawing. The smell of her crayons mixed with the faint scent of coffee. For the first time in years, that scent didn't carry tension. When Jason called that night, I told him about the settlement. He laughed softly. "You actually did it." I didn't think they'd ever cave. "They didn't have a choice," I said. "How do you feel?" I hesitated. Not happy. Just done. He understood. Happiness wasn't the point. Peace was. That evening, after Ellie went to bed, I sat by the window with a glass of wine. Outside, the streetlights blinked against the rain. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to earn love through usefulness. Every time I'd fixed their problems, bailed them out, paid their way, I thought I was keeping the family together. All I'd really done was feed their illusion that love could be taken, not returned. Now the balance had shifted, literally and emotionally. The first payment arrived the next morning. A quiet ping in my bank app. The note attached read, "Per agreement." Let's not make this uglier. I stared at it for a long moment. No apology, no acknowledgement, just compliance. But somehow that was enough. Because I no longer needed their regret to feel right. I had proof, boundaries, and silence. And all three felt better than forgiveness ever had. Life settled into something resembling normal. I went back to work, took Ellie to the park, even started sleeping through the night again. The tension that used to hum in my body like background noise was gone. My therapist called it decompression. I called it freedom. A week later, I heard from a cousin that Melissa had started working part-time at a dental office. Her husband was doing delivery shifts. My parents were downsizing their house. It wasn't revenge. It was consequence. For the first time, they were living within limits. Maybe that was the lesson they needed. Still, a part of me wondered if I'd gone too far. Late at night, that question sometimes hovered over me like a faint echo. Did I destroy them, or just hold them accountable? One evening, I got my answer from the most unexpected source. Ellie was drawing again. Another rabbit. This one wore sunglasses and carried a tiny suitcase. "Where's he going?" I asked. She grinned. "Somewhere sunny." But this time, he bought his own ticket. I laughed quietly, a sound that felt new in my own throat. "Smart rabbit." She looked up at me. "Mommy, are we still mad at Grandma?" I thought about it. "No," I said slowly. "We're just done waiting for her to be kind." Ellie nodded, satisfied with that. Children have a way of simplifying truths adults try to complicate. That night, I moved the settlement money into a separate account, labeled Ellie's Future Fund. I didn't want to touch it. It wasn't about wealth. It was about closure. Every dollar was a boundary restored, a reminder that even in betrayal, you can rebuild what's yours. A month later, an envelope arrived. No return address, just my mother's handwriting on the front. Inside was a short note. "We never meant for it to go this far." "Family shouldn't need contracts," I didn't reply. Because she was right. Family shouldn't need contracts. But if they break the meaning of the word, they earn the paperwork that replaces it. That night, I sat on the porch with Ellie curled beside me under a blanket. She pointed up at the night sky, at a plane moving across the stars. "Do you think they're flying somewhere nice?" she asked. "Probably," I said. "But we're already somewhere better." We watched the plane until it disappeared, leaving only silence and a faint hum of the world turning. I thought about that morning at the airport. Ellie's tears, the text message, the betrayal that finally broke something I should have let break years ago. They had voted her out of a trip, but in doing so, they voted themselves out of our lives. And for once, the vote was unanimous. I glanced at my phone, the same one that had once delivered their cruelty. Now it sat silent. No new messages, no apologies, just peace. Ellie fell asleep against my shoulder. I carried her to bed, tucking her in beside her stuffed bear. She stirred and murmured, "Love you, Mommy." "Love you more," I whispered. In the quiet that followed, I realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes justice isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just the sound of nothing left to explain. They left my daughter behind, thinking I'd do what I always did. Forgive. Fix. Forget. Instead, I built a life without them. And the truth is, I didn't ruin theirs. They did.